Some new letters from the famous scientist Carl Sagan have been released, and we learned that behind the scenes, he was a big advocate for weed. We already knew that he smoked weed occasionally. We didn't know the extent of it, and we didn't know just how much he was in favor of it, and the fact that he was writing about it on a fairly regular basis. So in one case, he wrote a letter in 1990 to Drug Policy Foundation head Arnold Trebek, where he complained, quote, about an ad campaign by the Partnership for a Drug-Free America. He said, quote, "Doesn't it seem to you that these commercials routinely make gross distortions of the scientific facts and uncertainties in our knowledge? Shouldn't there be a systematic attempt to rebut?" NASA also made contractors like him sign an oath saying he wouldn't use marijuana, and he was apparently really pissed off about this. He said, quote, "The oath required smacks of prior restraint and is unsymmetrical with respect to other crimes. We are not obliged to sign an oath that we will not murder our fellow employees, for example." So again, in typical Carl Sagan fashion here, using logic and reason. He's like, wait, why are we singling out this crime? Really? Drug crimes? You're making me sign an oath I won't smoke marijuana. What about rape? What about murder? What about domestic violence? What about crimes that are actually crimes and not just enjoying a substance? So some of the other letters were even sharper in their tone. Quote, "How much money is spent every year on the planet on illegal drugs? Does the existence of such enormous amounts of money inevitably lead to corruption in police and military enforcement agencies, legislators, intelligence agencies, and the executive branch? If the financial rewards from drug dealing are so enormous, will not the suppression of the drug industry in one nation cause it to proliferate in another nation?" Again, that's great. It seems to me like he was so far ahead of his time in how he talks about these issues, what he thinks about these issues, how he's bringing up really serious and intelligent points about the drug war. I mean, these are things that we talk about now, and we finally have like a bunch of science to back it up and studies to back it up. And, now we look back at the Prohibition days. I guess he might have connected the dots too based on the Prohibition days, where we realized that, hey, when you ban alcohol, it didn't get rid of alcohol. People were still drinking it, but now it's unsafe because it's unregulated and people can die from bad batches. And now the mafia is incredibly powerful because they're providing all the alcohol. So we look at that example and we go, oh, I see, prohibition of alcohol was fucking stupid. And he's saying the same thing about the drug war at a time when nobody was saying that about the drug war. And he's asking all these questions like, do you not realize this has unintended consequences that are worse, and it doesn't even necessarily help with how many people are taking drugs? He's so right and so smart and so ahead of his time. But here's the best part. Sagan's widow, Anne Druyan, said about their weed use, quote, "We smoked the way other American families would have wine with dinner. For us, it was our sacrament. It was something that made a great life sweeter in every possible way." Wow. That's really interesting, and that's really telling. Okay, the article also goes on to explain how in the last few months of his life, when he had pneumonia, he couldn't hold down food at all. He would smoke weed, and it would allow him to hold down food, and it took away a lot of the pain as well. So what we're talking about is a guy who was so smart and so ahead of his time, and he was a scientific mind. He did the original Cosmos, and, all around super bright. And he was saying back then, look, this is just a substance like any other substance. This is just a personal freedom issue. It's like somebody drinking caffeine or having a glass of whiskey or having a beer. I don't understand why we single out this when, by the way, this one I think has more positive effects, especially for people like us. So, Carl Sagan, yet again, man, the more we learn about him, the more we love him, and here we get some intimate detail into his relationship with weed.